Well, welcome back to Guerrilla Discipleship. I'm Kevin Baker, your host. I'm so glad that you're here. And as we continue to talk about what the differences are between a church that has become an institution, or the church as it seems to be institutionalized, and the church as a movement, as a body that is on the move and on mission for God. As we compare those two, as we have been for the last couple of weeks, I want to talk about a contrast between what I would call comfort and adventure. Now, there's everything right about seeking comfort from God. I think it's one of the biggest blessings that we have with our Father is that He wants to be our comforter. In fact, He tells us in His Word that He is the God of all comfort, who comforts us so that we can comfort others. So I want to make sure that we're clear here about the idea that we come and should come to God for comfort, and we should come even to the church for comfort, that we are to rejoice with those who are rejoicing and to weep with those who are weeping, that we are to carry one another's burdens. All of those things are true. But somehow, in most of our churches, in terms of institution, is that we've come to ask God to keep us comfortable. There's a difference between being comforted and being comfortable, but we want, in our 21st century middle class realities here in the West, we want to stay comfortable. In other words, we're risk averse. We're willing to take some risks, but we don't want God asking us to do too much risky stuff. We want God to comfort us. And in fact, we're in this chaotic world trying to struggle and survive, and we want God to bring comfort to us, to take away the struggle, to somehow reduce the stress and anxiety in our lives. And so we need to be careful about this because God has invited us into a grand adventure. Think about how He called Abraham. Before he was even Abraham, he was Abram. He called him out of the place that he knew, out of the place where his ancestors and his people were, a place that was known by him. And God said, come to a place that you don't know yet, that I haven't shown you yet. Just come and follow me. There's the adventure of God. It's God inviting us. It's Jesus walking along and saying to those He met, come follow me. He didn't tell them exactly what they were going to encounter or where they were going and all the details. He did say things like this: come follow me. If you want to be my disciple, you must lose your life. You must be willing to crucify yourself and pick up a new life with me. He said all kinds of things like that, right? Come follow me. Whoever follows me, if you want to be my disciple, you've got to hate your mother and your father and your sister and your brother. In other words, Jesus said very clearly that He was calling us into something radically different that was not going to be always comfortable, but it was going to be the mission that He was on. In fact, if you look at Jesus' high priestly prayer in John 17, He says, Father, I've accomplished the work that you sent me to do. And I'm going to leave those that you've given to me, those followers of mine, those disciples of mine, I'm leaving them in the world. I'm going to leave this world and come back and be with you, but I'm leaving my disciples here to continue the work, the mission that you gave me to do. So He asks the Father to protect us. There's the comfort. But He doesn't ask the Father, keep them comfortable. He says, protect them by the name that you gave me, the one that I've been protecting them by. Here's the thing. I mean, that whole prayer is a prayer that seems to be very clear that God is keeping us in enemy territory with a mission that is difficult, an adventure of following Him and building His kingdom with Him. And so He will comfort us. He will be with us. He's going to never leave us or forsake us, but He's not left us here to, just be on the couch comfortable. More than that, Jesus called us out of the world in the sense that we are still in it, but we're not of it. we have been called not to be friends of the world, but to be a friend of God. In fact, James says that friendship with the world is enmity with God. There's something going on here, right? Jesus is saying, if you want to be my disciple, I'm calling you to the same life I had, which was a life of persecution and struggle and suffering. It's a life of pouring out, but it is a life of peace and righteousness. Because Jesus says, I have the ability to give you comfort, let me use this word, peace, that passes all human understanding. I don't give you peace the way the world does. The way the world gives you peace or comfort is to take your circumstances that are difficult away or make your circumstances just comfortable. Jesus says, I'm going to give you peace in the midst of the chaos. I'm going to give you a peace that's transformative while you're still in the chaos of the world, because the people around you are going to look at you and say, wait a minute. They're in the same chaos that I'm in, but look at the peace they have. Look at the way that they live their lives. So we have interpreted too much, I think, in the church as an institution, that we're no longer in this movement business, no longer in this obedience and mission of God. We're just in the God, make us comfortable. We want you to now be the God who comforts us so that we can live in the world and be of the world. That's so contrary to the mission that God's given us, and so contrary to the promises that God has given to us and the commands that Jesus invited us to. And so we have been invited to be in this adventure of disciple making, in this adventure of spirit-led living that's going to take us to places that we would have probably never gone on our own. God's going to use us in ways that we think we're incapable of, and He's going to accomplish fruitfulness through us in ways that are multiplied beyond what we would ever have been able to do on our own. And it is an adventure, and we won't always understand day by day what exactly God's up to, but we have got to be willing to move out of comfortable to being comforted on the adventure that God has invited us to. Now, I'd be the first one to tell you, I hate roller coasters. I don't understand why people would strap themselves into a human creation that is, could be totally unreliable, to have their bodies shaken up and twisted around and dropped from heights and twirled over. None of that is exciting to me. In fact, I don't like that discomfort. I don't want that. And there are times when I feel like the Lord of my life has allowed me to get switched around and flailed around just like I've been on a roller coaster, but I have Him with me. And I can say, Father, I need your comfort in this moment. And He does comfort me. And I look over my life right now. I look back I'm 64 years old, and I've been walking with Jesus for at least 42, if not 45 of those years. And I think, man, what an adventure this has been. This was nowhere in my plan. The idea that I would be a pastor, the idea that I would basically move wherever God told me to move and serve people that I had no idea, that my whole family would be engaged in being a pastor's family. I mean, none of this. I grew up thinking, like probably most of you did, if you're here in the West, that I would just be a middle-class person working jobs and trying to have a life. And God had so much more in store. And has it been easy? Well, not all of it. Would I trade it? I would not trade it. I would not trade the life that God. In fact, I'm going to say this. Now, this may not relate to you at all, but I'm not even sure that I'd be alive if I hadn't begun to follow Jesus. I think I was on a path towards depression, destruction, and death, to tell you the truth. Maybe that's overplayed, and forgive me if it is, but I feel I feel regularly grateful that God has kept me in his fold and taken me on this adventure. I can look back now, of course, over those times in my life where they were hard. I mean, difficult. Tears and heartache and faithlessness and doubt and struggle and anger. And I see now what God was producing in me and through me. I see now the fruit. I'm living into the fruit of that. And so God has invited us into a great adventure. And here's what he wants. He wants to make us into the people he created us to be through those adventures. He wants to form in us a life that's eternal. And we're not going to get all of that by constantly saying, God, I'm not going to engage. I want to be comfortable. I'm afraid to risk. It's too difficult to follow you. It's not too difficult to follow Jesus because he gives us his Spirit that empowers us to say yes. We're not doing this in the flesh. We're living out of the power of the one who lives in us, who is the same one that raised Jesus from the dead. Now, I know for some of us, I think about as a parent and now as a grandparent, what do? I'm constantly saying to my kids, and I regret some of this, but I've said to my kids all the time, be careful. And I guess that's because I feel like life is dangerous, so I want them to be careful. But there's a part of me that also wishes I had more regularly said to them, be adventurous. Let God use you. Follow him. Watch what's going to happen. It's going to be scary, but it's going to be a great ride. So if my kids are in any way watching this, or my grandkids one day might see this, I want to say this. I do want you to be careful. I don't want you to be foolish, but I don't want you to miss the adventure that God is inviting you into. And I feel that way about you, my friends who are a part of this, whether you're watching here in the States or somewhere else. Be adventurous. Let God take you on a grand adventure. I know that it's scary to be out of control, but the one who controls everything, when we follow him, is controlling us, is in control of us as well. Jesus prayed it, right? Protect them. We have his protection. We don't need to be comfortable. We're eternal beings on mission for God in the power of his Spirit. We need adventure, and he's invited us to that. So the church that is a movement, man, doesn't always know where it's going to lead, doesn't understand how it's all going to work out, maybe sometimes doesn't even know if they've got the resources for it. The mission is larger than they can figure out, but they're constantly saying, hey, God, I know you'll protect me and provide for me, and I'm stepping into the adventure of walking with you. That's what a disciple maker does. We don't have to have it all figured out. In fact, we never will have it all figured out. We just know this. I'm going to take the step that God leads me to. I'm going to be willing to have spiritual conversations with people, even though I don't know where it's going to go or what's going to happen. I'm going to be willing to pray for people, even though I don't know when I ask them whether they're going to say, yes, I'm okay with you praying for me or not. I mean, that's the adventure. I'm going to be willing to listen to those nudges of the Spirit of God, inviting me to things that I'm going to go, is that me or is that God? Well, I'll never know until I begin to say, well, I hope this is you, God. Here I go. Now remember, he'll never lead you in any way that's contrary to what his word is. It's not like, God's going to invite us to something that makes that goes against his word but think about the adventure. Think about what we're going to get to the end of our lives whenever it is. And let's not be those kind of people that live in regret. Oh, I wish I'd tried this. I wonder if I could have ever done that. Let's be those people who say, man, wow, my life has been a grand adventure with the creator of the universe, and he has taken me places and done things in and through me that I never thought possible. That's the church that Jesus has birthed, and he's building his kingdom in it and through it. I pray that you will continue to be or start to be an adventurer as a disciple. in the mission that God's given for each of us. It's exciting, it's transformative, it's powerful, it's full of life. Thanks for being a part of this, and we're just going to continue to compare and contrast church's institution, church's movement over the next couple of weeks, and I hope that this is informing some of the way that you think about your own following of Jesus, your own disciple journey, and some of the ways that if you're a leader in a church, that you and I may be missing the grandest invitation for our people or for our colleagues and friends that has ever been out there. So thanks for tuning in. I always want to hear from you, kbaker@oakdale.church, or you can comment here. Thanks for being a part of the Guerrilla Discipleship family. We'll see you next week.